Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, Deconstructing Narcissism. So I got out of work not too long ago, but I wanted to talk about some gaslighting phrases that narcissists use, specifically my narcissistic baby boomer parents. The phrases that they used to use growing up, especially my mom. My mom had all the phrases in the book. The phrases that narcissistic baby boomer parents use and narcissistic parents use to slither their way out of taking accountability for the bad decisions and the bad things that they've done to you. So I'm going to start with one of them. Sorry, not sorry. This is your classic, I would be sorry, but unfortunately I don't think I have anything to be sorry about, so I'm going to say sorry, not sorry. This is a fake apology and a backhanded slap to the face in the same breath. This is basically saying, sorry, not sorry, is basically saying, even if I felt like I had something to be sorry about, I still wouldn't be sorry because you don't deserve it anyway. So that's basically what sorry, not sorry means. It's a slap in the face and it's a fake apology. It doesn't mean anything coming from the narcissist. The other thing, another one that my parents used to use is, well, there's no manual for parenting. You know, when we had you guys, it was something my mom and my dad used to say. Well, when we had you guys, you know, there was not like there was a manual for having kids. And actually, that's a lie. There were manuals for having kids, believe it or not. There were manuals for having babies. There were manuals for raising a child. There were manuals for the things you should buy, what you'll need, formulas, diapers. There were manuals back then when I was a kid. So that's just blatantly false too, which is the funny thing. But that was another one my narcissistic parents would use often was there's no manual for being a parent. Which, you know, number one, you shouldn't have to have a fucking manual, okay? I get it, parents make mistakes. You know, not every parent can be perfect. But here, let me give you a manual. Don't hit your kids. Use some common fucking sense. Don't be abusive, all right? Don't tell your kids bullshit lies. Tell them the truth even if the truth hurts, okay? You know, there are some things... There are some things not every parent is going to know, understandably. Okay, not every parent is going to know how, you know, in what ways certain things might affect them, okay? But most parents have, you know, most people have some common sense when they have kids. Some sense of right and wrong, okay? Some sense of right and wrong. You shouldn't leave a baby in a shitty diaper. You should change it. You shouldn't leave a baby unsupervised next to dangerous animals. You know, you shouldn't slam. You should make sure that when your kid is by the door, by the hatchet door of the car, when you're loading something, to make sure his hands are out of the way so you don't slam his hands in the hatch of the door in your van. You know, you should know not to go inside of a police station after that. After you just slammed your door on your kid's hand, whether that be by mistake or intentional. By the way, this is a real story that happened with me. My mom, she I guess for somehow she didn't know that my hand was because we were unloading something, and she was unloading something out of the back of the car, and she didn't know my hand was there on the door. It was on the edge of the door, and I was trying to help her or something, and she got the last of it, and she said, no, it's the last of it, and I still had my hand there. She closed it on me, and then afterwards she went into a police station, the genius, of course. Nothing happened to her, of course. The police didn't do anything. But, yeah, my hand was purple, red, blue, all sorts of colors for weeks. Horrible. Anyway, moving on forward. The next thing they'll say, the next gaslighting, guilt trip thing they'll say is whenever you have a complaint, a normal complaint, maybe help, you need help with your homework, or you need books for school, or maybe you're complaining about something they're doing. What they'll do is, after everything we've done for you, is a phrase that they will use, that my narcissistic parents use often. After everything we've done for you, you can at least show a little bit of gratitude. That's the phrase that they threw around all the time. After everything we've done, even if we weren't showing any kind of any kind of bad behavior or anything, it was always after everything we've done. It was a way to guilt trip us into feeling bad for essentially nothing, for calling out their bad behavior. So every time I used to call out my dad's or my mom's bad behavior, or we didn't like something. I remember my brother and sister doing this. We didn't like something they were doing, and it'd be like, my dad would be like, after everything we've done for you, yada, yada, yada. This is basically a way for them to deflect whatever bad thing or bad behavior they're currently doing at the moment that you're trying to explain to them that you don't like. All right? So that's another gaslighting thing. There's another gaslighting phrase that narcissistic parents often do. All right? Another one that my mom and my dad used to do is, you don't love me. They would say, you don't love me. Or this is a classic one, not just used by narcissistic parents. This is, of course, you don't love me, which the right, I don't love, and I never have, but the you don't love me phrase is a classic, it's a classic gaslighting phrase to make you feel bad about whatever they're doing to you. So they could be doing something bad to you or mean to you, and they could flip it on you and say, well, you don't love me because if you loved me, you would tolerate my shitty behavior. Or if you love me, you do this for me. Is essentially what it means. Another thing they do is, blackmail. So essentially, if you don't do something, or if you don't bend to their will, then they threaten you. They threaten to say something to you, or they threaten to do something. Blackmail is a common manipulation tactic used by narcissistic parents when they want to get their way. So that's one that was used often with me growing up. Another manipulation tactic is faking amnesia. Manipulation gaslighting tactic is it's faking amnesia, or essentially you faking amnesia. So it's pretending to not remember something, pretending to not remember a certain way events happened, or pretending, basically it's distortion of events that you know to be true, and they distort them in a way to make themselves either look good, or to deflect blame onto you, or to make you forget about the problem altogether, to make you forget about what you were talking about altogether. This is what they do oftentimes, is you'll be getting into an argument with somebody, or your parent, narcissistic parent, and they will talk about something completely different than what you were talking about. So you could be talking about, an argument you had at the bowling alley, or whatever. It would be often, for me, I would have arguments with my mom about privacy, her coming into my room all the time without privacy when I would be changing, which is disgusting, by the way. Her, coming into the bathroom when I'm showering. It was all about privacy. Baby boomers, generation's just sick. But arguments between me and my mom would often be about her invading my privacy. I'd have no privacy in the house whatsoever. And she'd change the subject to something like this. She'd be like, do you remember that one time that you said this? Do you remember that one time you said that? Or you remember that one time? So, it would be, she would use something in that moment to deflect accountability and make me forget about what I was even arguing about with her. So that's another thing that narcissists like to do a lot. They like to confuse you. Word salad, or, gaslight you into another argument about another thing that's completely separate from what you're arguing about. What's another thing to talk about? Another thing is, the gaslighting doesn't have to be about words either. I remember a lot of the times when I was tired from school or I was tired from work when I still lived with them, they would ask me if I wanted to go somewhere with them, or if I wanted to, go to my aunt's house or my uncle's house, or if I wanted to just do whatever. And if I didn't want to, I'd say no, and they would look, either my mom would do a few things. My mom and dad would do a few things. My mom would do the narcissistic smirk or the narcissistic stare in an attempt to manipulate me and make me change my mind, or she would just flat out try to make me feel guilty. She'd be like, but your so-and-so's gonna miss you, you should really go, I feel like you don't want to spend any time with us, which is true, I didn't, but she would try any which way to make me feel guilty. So I'd bend to her will, so I'd do what she wanted me to do. That's another thing that narcissistic parents do, another gaslighting manipulation tactic, right, that they love to do. All right? Think of another one, because there's just so many things that my parents used to do to me. Another thing would be if they were to buy me something growing up, it always had strings attached. All right. It would, if I got something, it was never without strings attached. Let's say I got something for my birthday, or I got something for Christmas or whatever. And I used it for a while, and all of a sudden, I didn't use it for a while. Let's say I stopped using it for a while. Things got busy. My dad would be like, what happened to what that thing I got you? You're not using it anymore? I thought you liked it. We buy you all these things, and then you don't use it. And that's one of the reasons why, we get upset with you, because we buy you things and you don't use it, and this and that. And they would try to twist it and turn it into a way to make me feel guilty if I didn't use something that they bought me right away. Another way they would guilt trip me or manipulate me was with money. If I had to ask anything, if I had to ask for money, it would be like, you're almost an adult, or you are adult, it's time to take a responsibility, yada yada. Even though narcissistic parents don't teach you any life skills to become an adult, to be the adult you need to be. But, that's the thing about narcissists, is just they expect, I guess, once you turn 18, it's just like that. You're an adult, you just know how to be an adult, you know how to do adult things, you know how to pay bills, you know how to pay rent, you know how to look for a house, you know all these things without being taught. It's just like that. You turn 18, a flip switches in your head, and all of a sudden you just know how to be an adult like that. You don't need to be taught or anything. So, that would be another thing they would manipulate me about. There were so many things. There were so many gaslighting phrases, so many things they would manipulate me with, But let me see if there's one more. I would say one more would be, one more manipulation tactic they would do is, if I wanted to hang out with friends, the few times I actually got to hang out with friends when I was little, because I didn't even have that many friends because of how overbearing and how controlling and how sadistic and demonic my mother was. I barely had any friends. But, the few times I wanted to hang out, let's say like back then with my girlfriend or a few of my other friends, it would always be an argument. It would always be like, you don't want to spend time with us. You're always out of the house. Why don't you have so-and-so come over here? Or why don't you have your girlfriend come over here? I don't think you need to go out tonight. Why don't you just take it easy? They would try to manipulate me into not going. They would make me feel guilty for having a social life, essentially. They would make me feel guilty for leaving the house, not wanting to be around them, wanting to be around with my friends, wanting to make connections, wanting to explore the world. This is when I was a teenager, so this is all normal, of course. But they would make me feel guilty for things that all normal teenagers get to do. So, I think that's pretty much the last. I think it's the last one, unless I have one more. What's another one I have? Again, there were so many that they did. It was I mean, there's just so many. Like, you know, another one they would do is the gaslighting technique they would do is, I couldn't do anything right. This is going to be the last one, by the way. Another gaslighting technique they used was just to make me feel stupid. That's what my narcissistic parents loved doing. That's why they put me in special ed classes. That's why they never let me move up in special ed classes. That's why my mom never taught me anything regarding my homework. That's why I wasn't taught anything. That's why I wasn't properly educated, because they needed me to be the fuck up son. They needed me to be the scapegoat. They needed me to look stupid in order to make them look good. So, again, this is something they did often, was to try to make me look stupid. So, if I loaded the dishwasher, you know, instead, you know, when I was growing up learning things, if I loaded the dishwasher wrong, or, you know, even though it wasn't wrong, I never really loaded the dishwasher wrong, but she would just say that in order to make me feel dumb. She would be like, look, you loaded the dishwasher wrong, or look what you've done, or this or that. And she talked to me as if I was a child. Of course, you know, I talked about this in another video of infantilization. She would talk to me as if I was a child. You know, so if I was loading the dishwasher, it would be wrong. If I was doing the dishes, I was doing the dishes wrong. If I was cooking food, I was cooking food wrong. If I was cleaning up the countertops, I was cleaning up the countertops wrong. If I was cleaning my room, you know, the room would be cleaned wrong. If I was doing everything I did was wrong. I could not do anything right in the eyes of my narcissistic parents. So that was the last one, guys. I hope you could relate to some of these. I hope you liked the video. Like and subscribe if you liked it. Comment if you liked this video. I'm gonna go into the store. I gotta get some food, but more videos to come, guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.